Okay, cool. Well, welcome to this episode of American Legacy Podcast. I'm your host, Phil Henry, and we have a special guest here, Matt Mackenzie. Matt, if you could just give us a little background about even just I think about your childhood all the way up to what you're doing today, and then we can go from there.
Sure. Yeah. So I grew up in rural Maine, Waldoboro, Warren area. Went to Medallic Valley High School. Went on to play basketball in college at Husson University. From there, I was a school teacher for 10 years, college basketball coach, and then kind of figured out that my passion was in player development and I wanted to be a business owner. So I just kind of took it from there, and I'm now doing what I'm doing today.
All right, which is?
So I'm the owner of Results Basketball and
Okay.
Eastern Maine Sports Academy, and now I also work full-time with Cooper Flagg.
All right. So I was thinking about you mentoring the number one NBA pick. You're from Waldoboro, Maine, this small dinky town in Maine, and here you are with the number one draft pick, and you're the guy that helped him. So tell me a little bit about the behind the scenes story about how that journey unfolded. Like, how did you meet this athlete? How did you and then what sort of things did you implement to be able to improve his chances and improve his probability of improving basketball?
So I met Cooper and his twin brother Ace when they were in the 6th grade. I had really just started my private training business a couple years before that. And I had developed a reputation in the community because I had worked with a couple of the players that they looked up to. One player, namely Bryce Lozier, who played at Hamden. He was Mr. Maine Basketball, Gatorade Player of the Year. And he was kind of like the Flagg's idol. That's the player that they looked up to. So they wanted to work with the same trainer that helped Bryce. And so their mom found me. I had just started training out of this small space in Bangor, Target Industrial Circle. It was like a glorified garage. And she looked me up and said, I've got 2 twin boys that are really interested in playing the game. They've got a lot of upside, but they need a little bit more direction, and it needs to come from somebody other than mom. And so I said, yeah, I'd love to work with them. I had heard a little bit about, their success already in the middle school. But I said, yeah, bring them in. Let's see what they're all about. And from day one, we just developed a really good relationship built on truth telling and trust. And, I think what has been able to be the one thing that stuck with the family is that I'm not going to kiss their ass. I'm going to always tell them the truth and tell them what they need to do to get better. And they respect that and they crave that.
That's great. It's funny, Target Industrial Circle. When I first moved to Bangor, I used to play hockey, and I was like, man, I need an outlet. And so there was a little MMA gym in one a back garage where Marcus the Irish Hand Grenade, and when he was in the UFC,
That's where
so it was like this, you'd walk down a bad dark hallway into some wacky little gym. And so it's funny. So that's where you actually started. That's where you had your first brick and mortar spot.
Yeah. I could tell the story, but that was my first brick and mortar spot where I signed a 3-year lease agreement with the building. We renovated this small space. Half of the space was dedicated to basketball. It was a half court. And then the other space was a weight room, a small little turf area where the athletes that came in to work with me could also lift. But again, it was only about 4,000 square feet, pretty small. But it gave us a good start. And when I went to the bank with a business plan, at least I had something to show.
Right. Yeah, that's crazy when you think back. Like, okay, because I read that you're the early days you were training kids in the garage, and then somehow Code gets, I don't know how Code gets word. Bangor Code, they're so good, eh? They can chase down, they can chase you down. But so when they shut down, tell me about the shutting down of code enforcement, and then when you get hit with stuff like that, when you're just starting out, you don't have the finances, you're trying to scrape together, you quit your teaching job to go into this thing.
Right.
And tell me about that. How does that change your direction or your mindset or?
Sure. Yeah. So when I first started getting into this, I was teaching full time, and I was really just looking for a side hustle. I enjoyed coaching. I knew that, again, I was passionate about teaching the game that I loved. And so I started working with local athletes privately, a lot of times at outdoor basketball courts, sneaking into any gym that I could find. And I found that it was just unreliable. I'd show up to a gym and all of a sudden there'd be some other program going on, or there'd be a travel team practice. And now all of a sudden I look like a bad guy because I'm not prepared, and,
Right.
we have no place to train. So I said, if I'm going to do this more full time, I need to have a place that I can rely on, that I know is always available. So I convinced a family member of mine, my father-in-law's brother, to let me renovate his garage. He had this garage with like 18-foot ceilings. And I said, what are the chances I can renovate this garage and turn it into a little basketball court so I can train athletes out of it? He said, if you're willing to spend the money to do that, go ahead, go ahead and use it.
Yeah.
At that point, he had moved out. He was just renting it to some college kids, and it had this wide open garage space. So I think I paid like $6,000 out of pocket, and as a teacher,
that's a lot of money.
As a teacher, that was a lot of money
big
to pony up out of pocket
For sure.
to put down a basketball court and a hoop. And it was only like 3 months into it. I was so proud of it. It looked amazing, I thought, at the time. And I was bringing in athletes in there every single day from like 3 o'clock to 9 o'clock at night.
Wow. And
I think one of the neighbors called code enforcement and said, this guy's running a business next door. I can hear the ball bouncing at night. And I was helping local athletes get better at their game.
Right.
But I think they didn't really appreciate the cars pulling up every hour on the hour and hearing the ball bounce at 9 o'clock at night. So they called it code enforcement. And I showed up there to train a player one afternoon, and there was a note on the door. And it was from the city of Bangor. And they said, you got to stop all action immediately. Please call us for more information. And they pretty much said, listen, this is a residential zone. You can't be running a commercial business. You got to stop all activity. So then I was like, well, at that point, I had a client base of 50 players that I would work with.
Full.
Calendar's
full of meetings and trainings. And meanwhile, you got to shut down your current facility.
Yeah. And at that point, again, I had built it up to where it was truly another full-time job. I'm teaching, but now I'm training 50 or so athletes on a regular basis, and I'm relying on the income.
Yeah.
And so I was scrambling a little bit. I ended up getting a short-term deal at a local church gym on Columbia Street in Bangor. They kind of let me use that space to fill that gap. And it bought me some time, really. And so I just went on a search for some type of commercial space that I could eventually renovate and be able to run my business full time, and came across this nasty space in Target Industrial Circle. I remember the first time I walked into it, it was just an absolute dump. There were like mice run through the whole place. But the one thing that had was the high ceilings, and it was wide open. And I said, well, we could probably put a crew in here, renovate it, and turn it into what I need it to be. Yeah. And, ultimately I knew that I had a bigger goal in mind, but I knew that I had to start somewhere, and 100%. That was it.
It's interesting when I'm thinking back, like, so you're teaching, you're also building this client base. There's a point in entrepreneurship when you make that choice where you're like, you've got your day job, then you have the side hustle. The day job gives you like the ability to pay your bills, pay your mortgage. But meanwhile, you have this extra income coming in from the business. At what point did you decide that you have enough security from the new business to be able to say, you know what, I'm going to my boss at the school and telling him I'm no longer coming in? Because I feel like, and this is an important thing for young entrepreneurs, because so often I hear guys, my side hustle, it's just getting started, so I'm going to quit my job. And what happens is there's so much pressure associated with that, especially when at that time you're married. I don't know if you had kids yet, but
yeah, I was. So I people call me crazy because I actually made that move the moment my first child was born. So it actually kind of just gave me the realization that I want to be around for my kids, and the number of hours that I was working a week, working full-time as a teacher, and then all evening and every single weekend training kids, something needed to give. I had built up, again, a pretty strong client base of players that I was working with, and I was making enough money so it could replace my teaching income. And so it was really just a matter of something's got to give here. And I had kind of like that entrepreneur mindset, and I knew that long-term, I didn't want the school system to determine how much money I could make every year.
Right.
And I knew that I was so driven that I wanted to be able to make sure that, my hard work could be rewarded, year after year after year. And I wasn't just going to be capped.
100%.
And that was my mindset. And I've always had that mindset. I'm too competitive not to be that way. And I said, all right, now's the time. I had a really good conversation with my wife. She was supportive of it. We were fortunate to be in a good position.
Sure.
Well, she was supportive of it, but she also, is successful. She's a nurse practitioner.
Yeah.
She had just finished up her graduate program. So I knew that, it was a risk, but I was pretty confident that I could make it happen. And she was, she had a good belief in what I could do as well. And so when my first child was born, my daughter, I said, this is what I'm going to do. The pandemic actually gave me a little bit more time to kind of plan through things and, put a more strategic business plan together, but we made it happen. And that was the turning point.
That's crazy when you think about like the pressure around that time, right? It's because at some point I feel like you get to a point where you can't ride the fence forever. I feel like you either have to like this analogy, this other entrepreneur. It's like at some point you're swinging on a rope and you have to let go of that rope to grab the other one. And not everyone's willing to do that. I mean, because there's a lot of fear there. There's a lot of thinking about what could go wrong, and especially when you have a new baby girl, you have your wife and your daughter, and the idea that you're going to have additional children.
Yeah. A lot of people called me crazy. A lot of people called me and said, Matt, I think you're making a mistake. Matt,
Right.
You have such good stability as a school teacher, and, you have good benefits, and that it's a guaranteed income every single year. And, are you sure you're making the right choice? Are you sure this is smart for your family? And I just said, I know it is. I know this is the right move, and I had a strong belief in myself, and I was willing to bet on that. And
That's awesome.
there was really no looking back.
Yeah. Well, I mean that is the case. It's funny because so often when you get this negative feedback from your closest family and friends, right? Your closest family and friends oftentimes will say your dream, like the stability is more important. And they're looking out for your best interest. They really are coming from a good intention, for sure. But what happens is it's like they don't have what you want. That's what's interesting. It's like they're giving you advice, but they don't have the financial independence and the ability to have said, I've built something. Right. And so it's hard to listen to that data. And a lot of times people do listen to that, and it sets them back. For sure. So it's like I always say, if you're listening to advice, listen to advice from someone who has what you want. And so when I think about you in the training and what's the biggest misconception about developing elite basketball talent? Especially like coming from a small place, and what's new and different that provides like a big impact on young athletes.
Yeah, well, I mean, I think the biggest thing is a lot of ex-players think that they can just pick up a basketball and go and develop somebody just because they played the game. And it couldn't be further from the truth. I think you need to be a teacher first, and you need to be able to understand how to connect with athletes on a larger scale. So it's taken me a lot of time to really figure that out. And I'm still learning today. I mean, I'm still picking things up from different coaches and trying to learn different strategies. But I think the biggest thing is being a good teacher and being a good coach and being able to help these athletes through not only the game, but through life and different things that they're going to face. So I think that's a large misconception, is just somebody can stop their playing career and immediately go and develop players, and they all want to do it. Everybody thinks that they can be a basketball trainer or a coach nowadays, but it takes time. And you can never stop learning. And I think that's the biggest thing. It's like you always have to make sure that you're keeping up with the times, and the game is always changing. So you've got to always continue to develop new strategies and new ways to connect. So I think that's the key. Okay. I'll always continue to learn and pick up different things and try to take little tidbits from different people that have done it before me. Yeah. Now working with Cooper, and he's in the NBA, my circle of people that I'm around, there's a lot of experience there. 100%. And so being able to talk to not only ex-NBA players, but current NBA coaches and player development, folks, I think it's really valuable for me, and it's allowed me to bring back some pretty neat stuff to the state of Maine.
I love that. And I think that as I used to play rugby at a higher level, but back then, like the techniques, the strategies for strength and conditioning and for cardio and VO2 and all the things that are really important for an athlete to go to the next level. We didn't have the tools, the measurements, the data, the analytics, so that's one part of coaching a client, if you will. But what about the mindset piece? Because mindset is I feel like it's very underappreciated. And what are your thoughts on coaching mindset, coaching belief, coaching from the mental aspect?
I think it's a major aspect of performance. We talk about how there's two parts, physical and mental, and mental is a huge component. And so even with some of the players that I work with today, especially in season, a lot of it is just checking in with them and making sure that they're okay, making sure that I can give them feedback after games, make sure that they're mentally dialed in. With Cooper being in the NBA and the travel schedule that he has to go through and playing these back-to-backs, a lot of time the coaching that I'm giving him right now is just little tidbits of information that I'm seeing in the games, or sending him a quick film breakdown, or giving him a challenge so he can kind of play games within the game. Just the other night, I sent him a message before the game, and I said, I want to see you shoot a minimum of 16 field goal attempts going into this game. Break it up however you want, whether it's 4 shots per quarter, whatever it is, you need to finish with 16 field goal attempts. I felt like he was being a little bit too passive in the couple games before that.
Got it.
And I said, listen, I'm giving you this challenge. After the game, if you have a horrendous game, then you can put it all on me. But you need to do it. You need to try it. And sure enough, he went out there and he had his career high since being an NBA player. He scored 35.
Point game.
Yeah, and afterwards he's like, maybe you got to give me some more challenges like that again.
That's great.
Yeah,
it's nice when it works too.
It's nice when it works, right? And then he followed that up with a 24-point game, and just little things like that where he's got another perspective. But it's not just Cooper. On a smaller scale, I'm doing the same thing with different high school players in Maine, and I'll watch their games and I'll give them just little things. Right. It doesn't have to be overwhelming. It can just be a simple cue. But to go back to your question, the mental side of it is so important, and making sure that your athletes or the people that you're coaching in general just, they're in the right frame of mind and they're prepared and they have everything that they need to be successful.
We interrupt this podcast for a short word from our sponsor.
Hey, John Raymond here from Back Home Farm in Dover, Foxcroft, Maine. Motivated by my personal health journey and through extensive research in genetics, I can now say I raise the healthiest meat you'll ever taste. American Wagyu. The omega-3 fatty acids in the Wagyu take it to the top. We take a lot of pride in the farm in raising our own food for the cows. We know what goes into the cows from birth right to your plate. We currently have a store in Dover, Foxcroft, Maine, and are getting ready to open a second location in Bangor, Maine, and plan on opening more stores south of here. We are getting set up now to start shipping directly to customer with our meats and our healthy products. Come by one of our stores and check out our healthy options, from meats, dairy, snacks, and household items. Come start your health journey with us. You can leave your glasses at home because we've done all the research before any of our products hit the shelves. You can follow us on Back Home Pharmacy and keep an eye out for our brand. Just remember, once you taste it, I think we'll all agree, nobody beats my meat.
Right. No, that's I always think about like the pressure when you're either in a big game, big shot, whatever the case is. If you don't start to reprogram the story in your head that replays, and a lot of us, like every human is challenged with the negative voice. You can't do it. You're gonna fuck this up, whatever the case is. But how do you having reps where you're under pressure, there's a rep so that you're comfortable in that, you get more comfortable in that environment when you have more repetitions, and the story that you're telling yourself, you've told it so many times that you begin to believe it. Like, shit, I can do this. Shit, I'm the man. I need to get the ball at the last minute because I'm the guy that should be, I'm the high probability shot maker. Right. Whatever it is that you're telling yourself. So is that something that you think a lot about, or
always trying to instill belief in my guys or women that I'm training. I just think it's a huge component of, making sure that I'm building them up, but always making sure that I'm telling them the truth. I'm not kissing their ass. I'm not telling them stuff that is not true. And I think that that's helped me become who I am today in terms of the respect that I get in player development. Is that they know that I'm not just going to bullshit them. And they know that if they have a bad game or they have stuff that they didn't do well, I'm going to be honest with them, but I'm going to give them hopefully some solutions to be able to be better the next time.
Right. No, I think I do some coaching, not in the mental space or the business world and so forth. But one of the things that I find really, really important is that being truthful and factual about where you're at right now in certain categories, right? And a lot of times people will either wear rose-colored glasses and they'll think that they're better, or, which is bad, but it's also just as bad to think you're worse than you are. So it's like, it's not right or wrong, but where are you right now here in your relationship with your wife and kids? Where are you right now? Are you having connected conversation? Do your kids want to spend time? Are you having one-on-ones with your kids? Right. What is that, and how does that translate? And if that's not where you want it to be and you want it to be here, perfect.
How are we gonna get there?
Let's have a clear vision of what that looks like for you, and visualize what that would feel like to have your wife give you a kiss before you leave to go to the office, when instead it was just like telling you to go get some stuff at the store on your way back, and transactional. So it's an interesting thing, but yeah, you have to be truthful about where you're at, and I think that's a really important thing. And one of the things you did mention that this constant learning, and I was at a conference one time and Tim Grover spoke, and Tim's obviously there's some connection between what you do and what Tim did with Michael Jordan and Kobe Bryant, and obviously about him, but guys like that, like, what do you take from someone like a Tim Grover who's been there, done that, and now is continuing to do other things? But
that's a good question. Somebody like Tim Grover, I feel like, is really great with the mental approach. Like you just mentioned, he's really dialed in with the preparation that it takes to be an elite athlete, and just how mentally tough you have to be. Whereas another player development coach might just be very strategic with, the ins and outs of a certain move or a certain action. So it really just depends on who the coach is or who the person is that I'm taking information from. I think that I've learned from a whole bunch of different people, and it doesn't necessarily have to be somebody involved in the NBA to learn something from them. I might learn something from a middle school coach in Carmel, Maine. You got to make sure that you understand, just because somebody's in the NBA doesn't mean that they know it all either. And there may be things that I don't agree with. So just trying to be strategic about what I want to kind of be and who I want to be. I think that's important, and to stay authentic.
Right. And then to grab and build your own style based on analyzing what other people have done, grab the nuggets that you think are going to be useful for your own program and for your own philosophy. Yeah, no, it's a good way to look at it. You said that your edge is navigating the NBA. What's the most surprising thing that you've learned so far moving inside that world?
It's just a different world in terms of on the court, but also off the court. The rigors of the NBA schedule, it's absolutely wild. Just they're either playing or they're traveling. There's back-to-back games throughout the schedule. So to be able to help a player find ways to be able to bounce back quickly, that's tough. And I think that was the one thing that Cooper in particular, as an 18-year-old rookie, he struggled with a little bit early on, is just, how do I get my body back to where I need it to be to perform the very next night? And then after that, I'm going to jump on a plane and I'm going to play in a city across the country, and I've got to be able to do the same thing. So that's new for me. And so being able to, for me, it's like, if I don't know the answer, I'm going to pick up the phone and I'm going to call people who have done it before through relationships I've built. And that way I can find the best answer for my client. And so that's what I've been doing, is just building relationships with different people that have been in the business, that have gone through this, and that way I can put together the best information for Cooper. But the NBA it's a wild world, and like I said, it's a business, but it's really important that you build relationships in that business if you want to get to where you want to be, and that's what I've learned, and I feel like so far I've done a good job doing that. And, I've met some really unique people, and I look forward to continuing to be able to pick things up from those people.
That's really great. Yeah. It's just such a great lesson for young entrepreneurs. It's like one of the things that I always say is like, it's trial and error is the worst path. It's the most lengthy path to get to where you want to go. And we only have one life. So it's like, how can you compress time? And you can compress time by gathering data from people that have done what you've done or what you want to do, or are experiencing the results in their lives that you want in your life. So I'd say that's a pretty good nugget for those that are watching, that are looking to do that. But one of the things that, I wanted to go back to kind of the tough times of entrepreneurship, and with your wife and the relationship with your wife, when you're working all day and then you come home at 9:30 at night, and there's fewer opportunities to connect.
Right.
There's fewer opportunities to keep that primary relationship connected. And I guess my question would be, number one, how did you experience that, if you did? And if you did experience that, how did you get to a place where you modified your behaviors to be able to put a priority on that? Because really, in the end, those are the things that really matter the most, and that's why we do what we do for the most part. So,
sure. Well, I'd be lying if I didn't say that we're still figuring that out. We're still working on that every day, but I think that you have to continue to make sure that your family is the priority. And my wife was always very supportive of this dream that I had, and she, without her, I don't want to say permission, but without her support, certainly I would not have been able to do what I do. And having her financial stability with her job obviously helped, but also just her belief in what I wanted to do was certainly, the greatest thing that could have happened. And then obviously my kids, I wanted to try to put together a spot that I knew that my kids could enjoy down the road. And so building Eastern Maine Sports Academy and VZ and the gym and all the stuff that comes with that, I knew that it would be a great spot for my kids to grow up, a place that my kids could go and exercise and be involved with sports, whether it's basketball or whatever it is. Yeah. I just thought that it would really be great for the kids. And so I kind of had that in mind as we built that, as that was the next step from the small gym at Target Industrial Circle. I just had the family in mind during that time. But, with my schedule the way it is right now, certainly navigating that balance is difficult. And my wife and I work through it every single day. Yeah. We certainly have, tough conversations, and she'll put me in my place, and I'll, usually think about it and reflect and say, okay, yeah, you're right. So it's just finding that balance of, making sure that when I am home, I'm present, making sure that, when I absolutely don't need to be at work, I try to get home. So still continuing to try to get better at those things.
Right. No, I think, you're certainly in the most chaotic time. I feel like it's, the challenge is you're an entrepreneur, you're running a business, you want to be a good dad, good husband. So it's like trying to, and then you want to stay physically healthy, right? It's like you want to be an example, because the reality is, an athlete's not going to take your word as a man of integrity if you are neglecting your own body, right? And so you see entrepreneurs, yeah. And so if you're an entrepreneur and you're teaching others how to be fit, and you're 50 pounds overweight, it's hard to really, that's a problem. So, but to be able to balance all those things and invest in each of those categories on a consistent basis, there's not a lot of examples. Like you see guys that are basically owned by their business, and so they have no time. They're twice divorced over, and then you have guys that are financially they're great. Maybe they have a good relationship, but they're obese, and they're on death's door. Right. So it's like, there's not a lot of examples where you can actually see someone who's hitting a 9 and a 10 in each of those categories. So it's interesting how people go through those things.
Yeah, and I think it's an evolving process too. You have to continue to work through things and figure it out, and again find that balance. I do prioritize my own health, and That's something that's important to me.
Right.
And so being able to find little times each day where I can go get a quick workout in, and I think it's good for the mental as well.
Big time.
So when I come home, I'm feeling refreshed and I'm feeling in a good space.
Right, and you can be present.
Right.
And that's important too. Yeah, yeah. No, I always think like for physical exercise for me is just as much staying healthy and being an example for my kids. That's a priority in your life. But also for the mental side, like it makes me a more loving, caring, present husband when I've done a hell of a workout in the morning or something, So what separates an athlete who wants honest coaching from one who's just like, looking for positive feedback and wants a good Instagram reel?
Yeah, that's a good point. I'm glad you said that. So I see a couple things. A lot of times the younger kids that will come into our gym, you can tell right away when they're there because their parents want them to be there. They don't really want to be there. And I can usually figure that out within the first workout, with a kid, just as to whether or not their intentions are to really get better or if it's their parents that want it more than them. And then whoever just wants to be able to post on Instagram or put a reel together that they were in my gym or that they worked with me or they worked with my staff as a status thing. Okay, I worked with this staff. I'm putting in the hours. I'm on the grind. Off season.
Right.
All of that stuff is just the greatness happens in a quiet gym, and you don't have to post about it every single time. And I think that it takes a little bit of time to really realize, like, the kids that do want to put in the work day after day after day, and they want to stack those days together. And but those are the kids that really get the most out of my coaching. The kids that don't really care about the extra fluff. They don't really need to have all this praise on social media. They're not looking for rankings. They're not looking for anything other than just they in their heart want to be the best basketball player, the best athlete that they can possibly be.
Right.
They have goals. They are willing to take honest coaching. And I don't mean that I'm just criticizing them all the time. That's not what that's about. It's more just, I'll tell them what they need to do to get better. And
Right.
sometimes we will have tough conversations, but other times I'm of course going to give them praise. I just kind of have to read the day and figure out, what they need.
What they need at that time.
What they need at that time.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
our gym works with athletes of all ages, all abilities. The biggest thing is we want to be able to help people that love the game of basketball reach their goals. And for some people, that might be to make their middle school basketball team.
Yep.
For others, it might be to be a varsity athlete. For somebody else, it might be to go and play in college. And, for a player like Cooper, it was to make the NBA.
Right.
And he told me when he was in the 7th grade that
That
was his dream.
That's great.
And, seeing his growth over a number of years and being able to help him realize that dream, that's been one of my greatest accomplishments in my professional career.
Right. Yeah. No, it's interesting. One of the things you did mention is that, I think, people think that progress is like these huge advancements, right? Like, I'm going to, like, in 2 months, 3 months, in a quarter, I think I can change my life. And the reality is it's about stacking these small, daily, consistent activities over long periods of time.
Right.
And so if you stack a very specific strategy over an entire 365-day plan, now you're starting to see movement. And that movement, and part of that is learning the process of enjoying the boring shit day to day and grinding it out without the praise, because it's what you're doing when no one's around, and the shots you're taking, and the and the weights you're doing when Coach Matt's not around, because Coach Matt is going to be there for an hour a week,
Right.
but there's a lot of other time
Yeah.
in the week, and if you're just waiting for Matt's guidance.
And that's what I tell the players that I work with. It's like, don't rely on me to be your only source of a workout throughout the week or throughout the month or the year. If that's the case, then I'm not the person for you. Use me as like a GPS to give you a roadmap of where you want to get to.
I can make some course corrections for you to get you to the trajectory faster. Yeah. So you're building opportunities for Maine kids that never existed before. What's the long-term vision for the basketball pipeline that you're creating?
Yeah. So over the last couple of years, I've been able to do some pretty neat things for Maine basketball, and I was involved in the coaching staff of a team called Maine United that played in the Nike EYBL circuit when Cooper and Ace and Landon Clark from Bangor and a couple of those guys were going through high school. And so through some relationships that we built playing in that circuit, I've continued to keep those connections. And now it's about getting the next generation of Maine basketball players seen on a national level.
Right.
And so a lot of the athletes that come through my gym week to week, month to month, we've assembled a group of some of the very best in Maine, and they're going to be participating on a national circuit this spring. We've named the team Team Maine, and so it's going to be kind of the second team, I guess, if you will, after Maine United to participate on a national circuit. That's invite only, and I personally think that we have 4 or 5 scholarship level players on that team right now, if they continue to develop the way that they should. So that's something that I'm pretty proud of and I'm excited about. And then this past year was the second year that I ran like invite only positional camps for players all over the state. So I did one for the middle school level called the Next Up Camp. It's free for the players. We get sponsorships from local businesses to allow the players to come that are invited to come without paying any money, which I think is important. And then for the high school kids, I did it positionally. So I did a front court camp and a back court camp. And again, free for the players to come. We give them, some swag, some T-shirts. But the biggest thing is that we give them a developmental opportunity throughout a weekend where they can take in the coaching from me and my staff, but also I add in sports performance training, nutrition, talking about recovery. I try to give them like the whole product of what it takes to be an elite athlete. And my whole message is like the earlier that these kids can learn that, the greater they're going to be, 100%. And I've been fortunate enough to be able to travel across the country and learn some of these different things at these NBA facilities. And I just want to bring it back to the state of Maine and give them some of that education that they can benefit from as early on as possible.
I love that. No, that's so great. I mean, because really, if these young kids, a lot of times, you need to know, right? So if you're bringing them in and then saying like, hey, here are the 5 or 6 facets of training, nutrition, performance, mindset, that sort of thing, so that they're aware of what it would take to get to the next level. Right. And so at least they are now aware. How you respond to that is up to you as an individual athlete, but now you at least know the rules of the game if you want to excel.
So there's a mentorship component to that as well. What I've done the last couple of years is I'll bring in either current college athletes or college coaches or former athletes that have been there and done that. And I'll have like a mentorship panel or a question and answer. Yes. And so I think that that's really been valuable for the athletes. They have an opportunity to answer questions for them. The athletes can ask questions that they think of. So that component I think is really valuable as well. So just kind of organizing and orchestrating that is something that I'm passionate about. It's not a moneymaker for me. It's more just like giving back to Maine basketball. Yeah, that's great. But it's like, when you think about your impact and what you want to try to leave on the state of Maine or the climate of Maine basketball, I want to be a part of helping it get to a better place than where it was. And Cooper and his success has allowed me to kind of have that platform, if you will, and I think that I want to continue to make sure that I'm making the most out of that.
That's great. Yeah, because one of the things when you live in a small state like Maine, right, population-wise, is that it's one thing to have great athletes, but it's another thing to get visibility of those athletes, and that's always been a challenge when we're from, like, I'm from New Brunswick, Canada, small province, so the big provinces like British Columbia or Ontario, they get all the camps, they get all the notoriety, they get all the visibility, and so it's hard when you're a remote place like Maine. How do you get these athletes to be seen? Because in so many cases, we have skilled athletes, but visibility is part of the process. If you're not seen, it's like you can have the best store in town, but if it's in the middle of the woods, no one's going to go visit your store. And so I think that what you're doing by assembling an elite travel team, putting them in front of stiff competition so that they have the competition, but also the visibility, it's an important thing. Yeah. If a young coach or trainer came to you today wanting to follow your path, what would you tell them to avoid, and what must they double down on?
That's again a good question. I would tell them to just stay persistent. I think it's important to dream big, but make sure that you have a calculated strategy in place on how you're going to get there. I think a lot of people, they just try to wing it. You talked about how trial and error is usually not the way to go. Make sure, again, that you're learning from different people around you and be willing to accept advice from others that have done it and done it well. But again, don't be scared of a challenge. I think that as a competitor, as a former athlete, as a coach, that's what's kind of been driving me, and that's what's going to continue to drive me, is that I'm always going to be willing to step up to a challenge. And as whether that's as an athlete or a businessman, that's what fuels me. Is I'm always competitive. I'm always a mover. People ask me, what's my next move? It's like, I don't sit still well. I need to make sure that I continue to strive to be better. And so I would just tell, somebody who's young, is like, don't skip steps. Make sure that you're, you have a progression to what you're doing. Make sure that it's calculated, and be willing to learn from others that have done it before you.
Yeah, no, that's interesting how sports can translate into entrepreneurship. I mean, that feeling when you're going to play a big game, and the butterflies and the like fear of like performance anxiety, when you like, everybody gets it when you're going into a big game. It's natural, but you can shy away from that, or you can, and that happens in entrepreneurship. Shit, I'm making a big move right now, like butterflies, like where am I going to get the money? How am I going to pay the staff? And sometimes, those are that fear can prevent you from stepping over the line, but there's so much reward in pushing through that and stepping over the line. And I appreciate your story. And I guess to close out, like, how can people find you? How can people like locate you on Instagram, or what are your social media posts?
So I can be found on Instagram and Facebook at Results Basketball.
Okay.
And then Eastern Maine Sports Academy is my brick and mortar facility that I work out of. So you can find us at EM Sports Academy there. But I post updates from time to time of my travel, where I am. From time to time, I'll post little instructional videos, or I'll put out posts of different things that we're running at the gym. Okay. But at Results Basketball is probably the best place to find.
So, for those of you who want to accelerate your basketball skills, reach out to Matt Mackenzie at Results Basketball on Instagram.
The one last thing I'll plug is this. So this past year, I started a nonprofit organization called the Maine Made Youth Sports Foundation. And through that foundation, we're trying to get local businesses to help out the next coming of Maine athletes to get to where they want to be. Perfect. And so events like the invitational camps or the travel team going out of state, they wouldn't be able to do that without support from businesses 100%. That want to help local athletes. So, if there's businesses out there, local businessmen that want to support athletes, feel free to give me a call, help out the foundation. We have obviously big dreams of what we can do with that. And we have some people that are going to help us with that over the next couple of years. But I love that. I'm in. All right. So we'll chat after Sounds this, good.
But you don't want finances to get in the way of progression of young athletes in Maine, because it's so if you can kind of cover that obstacle.
Yeah. And I just think about like the financial burden that it could have been on some of these families when we traveled with the Nike circuit. Right. I mean, it cost over $100,000 to get through one spring circuit, because we're traveling to Memphis and we're going to Dallas, and we're all over the country, and we're having to fly planes and buy uniforms and meals and hotels and everything like that. It all paid off. I mean, you look at the team that we had, and out of our starting lineup, I believe every single one of them is playing college basketball at this point, or in the NBA, that's right? Impressive. And a few of them are on full scholarships. So it really paved the way for the next coming of Maine athletes, and we want to make sure that we continue to give those opportunities to them. And if the finances are a burden, I just want to be able to make sure that I can provide some type of way of helping them out. That way it's not the thing holding them back.
I love that. Well, thanks, Matt. I appreciate it. Been good to chat. And until next time. Okay. Take care.
Thank you for watching and listening in. American Legacy is a production of Perfect Fit USA. Copyright 2025 by Perfect Fit USA. To learn more about Perfect Fit and the Perfect Fit family of companies, please visit perfectfitusa.com.